The way I got started doing this is I just started recording my lessons live for my students who were missing class and posting those online for them as a resource. They get to access it when they want to, and that could be at 10 o'clock at night, it could be 6 o'clock in the morning, it could be on the bus to the soccer game. They have control of that. Students would watch those before they came to class, and then class time was work time, engaging in some higher order thinking, and so we didn't have to use our class time for direct instruction. We could shift that out of the class.
What are the biggest improvements you find in your students by using flipped classroom?
You know, I found that they're more engaged in their learning process. Instead of just passively listening to me give them information and then telling it back to me on an exam or telling it back to me on problems, they were actively asking me questions and answering my questions and really wrestling through the material. So that's what I saw. The second thing that I really noticed with my students is that they were taking control of the learning process. So instead of just waiting for me to tell them exactly what to do and how to do it so they could repeat it back to me, they were taking the initiative to determine, okay, what do I need to do next? So I had a course structure of material they needed to work through, and when they were ready for the next part, they would work through the next thing. And then as soon as they were done with that, they would find out what they needed to next, or maybe it was a practice to do, or maybe it was a lab to do. So instead of me telling them exactly what to do, they were taking the initiative to find out what they needed to do next.
Do students' grades improve as well?
Yeah, you know what's interesting is all teachers, we struggle with students who fail our courses. I had fewer students failing my course. I had fewer students who were just barely passing my course. Almost all of my students showed like one letter grade increase. So students who were getting a letter grade of B were now getting an A. Students who were getting a C are now getting a B.
Maybe you were just becoming kinder.
I don't think so, because I was giving them, at least the first year I did this, I used the exact same exams and I used the exact same assignments. I simply shifted the time in which those things were given, instruction out of the class, practice in the class. So the material was exactly the same, and I still saw the increase of their grades.
Why do you think it worked?
I think it worked because the students were given something that they were capable of doing at home, and then they had the support in the class to deal with what I was calling earlier the hard stuff. When they were supposed to apply and to extend what they had already learned, they had their peers, they had me as a content area expert there to help them overcome any hurdles they ran into.
But in a class, of course, you would have very bright students and maybe those with difficulties learning your subject. How do you actually make the whole class move forward together? You got to guide the very bright one and then the one who is struggling as well.
The great thing about having a flexible tool like a flipped classroom is once you have a library of content, of instruction, the fast learners, the really bright students, they can move ahead as quickly as they want. So I had some students who finished my course a month and a half before the end of the term. So they were done early. I gave them the flexibility to work on independent research projects that they wanted to explore on their own. My attention then was focused on the students who struggled. So I was very much working with them on a daily basis to keep them moving forward. I had weekly benchmarks I asked the students to achieve, have this much work completed by the end of the week. So instead of having daily assignments, do this today, I would say this is the work for the week. If you want to do it all on Monday, that's fine. If you want to work steadily through it throughout the week, that's fine. So I gave the students some choice and some flexibility in that as well.
สำหรับรูปแบบการเรียนการสอนแบบ Flip Classroom ครูจะต้องพลิกบทบาทของตัวเองจากผู้บรรยายเลคเชอร์แบบเดิมๆมาเป็นโค้ชที่คอยให้คำปรึกษาและคำชี้แนะกับนักเรียนแทนโดยใช้เทคโนโลยีเข้ามาช่วยเพื่อใช้เวลาในห้องเรียนให้เกิดประสิทธิภาพมากที่สุด
Now for teachers who want to use some flipped classroom, what are the teaching techniques that they need to have in the classroom apart from recording videos and then let the students watch it at home?
Yeah, a lot of teachers are taking the flipped classroom and they're using that as a way to move toward things like project-based learning and problem-based learning or inquiry-based learning. Things that they have a lot of research around them as being effective teaching tools. But many teachers don't know how to make the transition from being the person who delivers information to the person who's facilitating very much a problem-based learning where the students are supposed to be, answering questions, doing research on their own. So a lot of teachers are using this as a way to make that transition. So some of the skills they need to have as a teacher then are ways to engage their students with a project or with a question that will cause the students to have to go back on what they had already learned through video content and then extend that to another realm. So it's very different than simply information transfer. They have to be able to facilitate what is not a highly organized classroom. I mean, it can be messy, but learning is messy.
How long or short should a video lecture be?
My general rule of thumb is 1 to 1.5 minutes per grade level that the student is. So if I was teaching grade 3 students, 3 to 4.5 minutes. I was teaching 10th grade students, so that's 10 to 15 minutes. So another way to look at it is 1 minute per year old that the child is. So an 8-year-old student, maybe an 8-minute video. So keep them short.
ในบรรดาวิดีโอออนไลน์เพื่อประโยชน์ทางการศึกษา Khan Academy และ TED Talk เป็นวิดีโอออนไลน์ที่ได้รับความสนใจเป็นอย่างมาก โดยที่ Khan Academy มีวิดีโอที่สอนเนื้อหาหลากหลายวิชา ให้เด็กๆทั่วโลกสามารถคลิกเข้าไปดูได้ฟรี และ TED Talk เป็นเวทีเชิญคนที่มีแนวคิดน่าสนใจและเป็นแรงบันดาลใจให้กับผู้อื่นมาพูดบรรยายโดยคนทั่วไปสามารถดูการบรรยายเหล่านี้ได้ฟรีเช่นกันครูหลายคนใช้วิดีโอของ Khan Academy และ TED Talk มาเป็นสื่อการสอนในห้องเรียนแบบ Flip Classroom ด้วย
Apart from your own lectures, do you use other sources such as the Khan Academy or maybe TED Talk series?
Yeah, periodically we would use other resources and bring those into our class. My colleague and I, we believe very strongly that education is about strong relationships between a teacher and a student. And so a teacher, they have a connection with their students that no one else in the world has. And so if someone else used my material in their class, their students would learn the chemistry just fine. But there would be a strange person telling them about the chemistry. So I believe very strongly that teachers should be encouraged to make their own content.
Can flipped classroom be used with any subjects at all?
I've seen the flipped classroom applied from the very youngest students through graduate level university. I've seen it in math and science primarily, but I have also seen humanities teachers, history teachers, music teachers, and art teachers using this as a way to deliver basic content, basic information, maybe even skill-based information, let's say in terms of an art class, or maybe just a concept overview of a period of history or of a particular author in a literature class. So ways to just get information out there so that they can get the class time back. So it's applicable in all different areas.
And for all levels of learning as well?
Yeah, definitely all levels, but it will be used differently. So most of the teachers who are teaching primary grade students, younger students, they're using it less than someone who taught high school chemistry like myself. I had 100 chemistry lessons that I made, 100 chemistry videos, whereas a smaller primary grade teacher may have 10 for the course of a year. I know, there's 26 letters in the English alphabet, and I know a teacher who had 26 lessons, one for how to draw each letter of the alphabet, and that's the extent to which she used it.
Are there any downsides to flipped classroom at all?
Oh, sure. With any sort of change, there's always going to be something you have to sacrifice. So the one thing that I had to sacrifice was those spontaneous questions. When you're giving a live lesson in class and a student doesn't understand something, they ask. They raise their hand and they ask the question for clarification right then and there, and they can have that question answered. In a flipped classroom, you don't have that opportunity. But what I did encourage my students to do was to write those questions down. Bring those to class. So I wouldn't answer them immediately while they're watching the video, but those questions would still be addressed. So there is a little bit of a drawback in that respect.